Oh, the general.
Good morning, John.
Morning, sir.
How are you?
I'm
nice
fine.
to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome to Third Eye Africa TV.
And thanks for the opportunity.
And we actually want to know your contribution towards peace in Africa, globally, and of course, we'll be entering here. This is Third Eye Africa TV.
Thank you.
So let's go in, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello there and welcome to this edition of The Veteran. You are on to Third Eye Africa TV. This program looks at the lives and times, as the name implies, the veterans. What is it that they've done to humanity? What is it that they've done to themselves? What have been their contributions to ensure that families live peacefully, communities live peacefully, countries, nations live peacefully, and of course, global peace. What is it that these people have done? We feel that we should invite a general who has done quite a lot. A lot as in well-decorated general at home and abroad, a Nigerian. He's from Cross River State. He will say all of that. Apart from that, the United Nations so honored him. He was in Lebanon, he was in Sudan, he was in Liberia, Sierra Leone, all for the quest to have global peace. He will talk all of this. My name is Ben Shaman, your regular host of the program, The Veteran. And with me is truly a veteran, and I'm talking of Major General Moses Bisong, or B. I'm not talking of a politician. I'm talking of a general, or B. I want to thank you for coming to Third Eye Africa.
Thank you, John. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, he has baptized me to John. Ben.
Sorry, Ben.
Thank you very much. Yes. And so let's start first. Let's know that baby. In brief, that baby that was born in Cross River State, only to grow to become a general. How was your life like?
Well, Ben, this is quite interesting. We thank God for everything. I was born in a place called Okubushu in Boki local government area of Cross River State, as you rightly said. From a small place, I started my primary school and finally finished in my village, my community, with a distinction in 1968. Now, in 1979, I wrote entrance examination to the Nigerian Military School. Then
that's in Zaria?
Zaria.
Okay.
Then we were not Cross River State, we were Southeastern State, covering the present Cross River State and Akwa Ibom. I went to Calabar to write that entrance examination. I was taken in a Land Rover. We slept on the way somewhere. I got to Zaria, to Calabar, wrote the entrance. And finally, we were awaiting results. Now, as Providence would have it, before this time, my elder brother Albert I had written entrance examinations to schools. Maryknoll College, Boki Boys Secondary School, I had passed. But maybe my father didn't have enough money at that time because I had another brother of mine, Michael, who was in school. So I was supposed to wait. I had a chance after passing an interview. I was hailed at that interview to Bukky Boys Secondary School. But again, there was no money for me to go immediately. My brother said, look, why don't you go and meet the principal, who was at that time a Reverend Father, if they could convert this admission to a seminary. Obviously, at that time, I was convinced the seminary would be happy to have somebody.
So you would have been a Reverend Father?
Yes, and I don't hate being a Reverend Father, but I also had the interest of having children. And if I was to choose, I would rather choose to have children.
And you have them.
But if it were possible, I would have loved to be both, to be a Reverend Father and still have children. But since it was not possible, I said, my brother, I don't want to be a priest. But actually, I don't hate being a priest, but I wanted to have children. He said, no problem. You can have the education and still decide not to be. In my mind, I told myself that would be deceiving God. But I still respected my brother. And I took a bicycle from Ogoja to Bukky, over 20 kilometers, rode a bicycle as a baby. And when I got there, I was about climbing upstairs to the principal's office. I was convinced he would accept. Then I met my brother's mate, my senior, a student at that time, who said, Moses, what are you here for? I said, my brother asked me to come and ask the Reverend Father if he will accept to convert my admission to a seminary because, as at now, my father, his hands are full. He said, I don't think Father will accept. At that time, I told myself, why deceive God? Instead of climbing up to meet the Reverend Father, I decided to climb my bicycle and return to Ogoja and told my brother that Father said no. So I chose to deceive my father, my brother, rather than deceive God. And that was how, without me knowing how, a form came for me to fill to write military school examination. That is how he put me in a Land Rover and then to Calabar, where I was dropped to write the examination. I wrote the examination at Jam Military School, Zaria. And at the end, I was taken by another boy to the Commissioner for Rehabilitation, or whatever they called it then. The war had ended and we had this relief services on Chief Michael Logan. And he was a philanthropist. People were going after him in the morning as he came out of his room. And I also managed to shout, sir, I'm supposed to be going home now. I don't have money to go. He said, look at the vehicle that's going home. The vehicle of the relief services, Catholic relief services, that was doing humanitarian services, was going to Ogoja. That was how I stood by it. And when it was time, I jumped into that vehicle. And there were more people than seats available. I made sure I jumped as fast as possible and held on to a seat.
So the military intuition was already with you.
Yeah, because I didn't want to be stranded. And that is how they took me back to the Cross River, Cross River. Kept me there, and another boy went for the same entrance, and the big guys went to sleep. I slept in the vehicle there. In the morning, a pontoon came forward, and they rolled our vehicle into a pontoon, and we crossed the Cross River, and I returned to Ogoja. Now, very interesting to tell you that God is at work. The entrance examination result came. I was supposed to have been in Zaria for the entrance examination, but I didn't know.
Maybe communication?
Yes. Communication. Now, a letter was written, because then they would register letters to care of my brother, who was working in the local government. No, then it was divisional office. And we had also, Ogoja was a provincial headquarters, and divisional office, I think, was a provincial headquarters. And that place was very near the post office. So they registered a letter to me through him. But he went on tax assessment, and he had told his friend next office to the post office, please, my brother is expecting a call to interview. If anything comes like this, please, if I'm not around, let him know. And that guy said he had also written an NMS entrance in his own time. And somehow he got the slip for the registered letter, called me for interview and didn't pass it on to me. And the entrance examination in the military school was written. First said, second said, third said, and I was not there. As a child in Ogoja, I do not know what carried me from my brother's accommodation where he rented a place we were staying. And I got onto the road in Ogoja town, and I was walking on the road on my own towards the general post office. Then I met my headmaster in my primary school in the village, who was not from my place, but from a place called Mbube. And what made him to be on the road at that time, and for me to be on the road at that time, walking, and for us to meet, and he said, "Oh, Moses, so sorry. James Ofana, you have met in the primary school, we had finished now, and we had left the primary school, went to Zaria for interview. They called your name, and you were not there. How did James meet this man? We had left primary school. We are no more with him. The primary school is many kilometers away in Ogoja, in Boki, maybe 20-something kilometers. And James comes from Ishibori in Ogoja. I come from Boki there. The headmaster comes from Mbube. What brought them together for him to get that message? And he now met me on the road and delivered the message to me. So I went back, and I wouldn't say I wept, but I felt like crying. And a relation of mine, of ours, I approached, took me to the divisional of the provincial headquarters, and we met the assistant head of the outfit, maybe the DO or assistant DO. The DO was not there, division officer. The assistant said, "Oh no, this is a place we would have loved our children to go to. Who made this to our child?" But the reason why they took me there is that the military school then said, if a child passes, is called for interview, the division or the province should give him transport money. But if you do not give the transport money, write a letter and say, "We did not give." NMS will refund your money. So that was why I was taken there. But the divisional officer was ready to do something like that, to give me a letter that we didn't give him money to go. But they couldn't send me to Zaria when my brother was not there, because I was a baby. My brother had gone out. On getting home, my brother had returned. And I said, "Look at what happened." He said, "Go and collect that letter." So I took my bicycle and returned to the divisional office, call it about 2 or so kilometers. And by this time, when I got to the office, the assistant DO, who had said, "Oh, we'll give you a letter," and I went to wait for my brother's consent, was no longer in, and the DO himself was now in. So I felt out the bigger man is even around. So I went to him. He said, "No, it's too late. There's nothing we can do about it." I took my bicycle and returned to Igoli in Ogoja and told my brother I didn't meet the assistant DO who had promised giving us the letter. I met the DO himself. He said, "No, it's too late." My brother said, "Go back and meet the assistant DO." I asked myself, the DO has said no. How would the assistant DO say yes? But again, I was obedient. I took my bicycle and returned. So you can imagine how many kilometers forth and back. When I went there, the assistant DO was still not around. And I sat down on a lawn. So this thing I'm talking about, from the time I met the assistant DO to this time, maybe about 30 minutes, 1 hour would have passed. Then the DO who had told me, "No, it's too late. There's nothing we can do about it." He said, "Where is that boy who was here?" On the lawn, I heard it. I went to him. He said, "Give him that letter." They wrote a letter for me that I was not given transport money to go to Zaria. And I got a call to interview very late. My brother put me in a truck with somebody, a lawyer who was working in the magistrate court, who was going to Ogoja, to Makurdi. And they took me
That's capital of Benue State today.
Capital of Benue State, from Ogoja in Cross River State. They took me to Makurdi. The person that this guy went to see, the lawyer, they received us, gave me food to eat, and in the morning they said, go like this, you get to railway station. Primary school boy was now to look for a railway station in Makurdi. So I kept going. But what was my guide was the sound of the train. And they were just local trains at that time. The Civil War ended in 1970. Was it 70?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Yeah. And I was to write entrance examination in 1970 and to go to Nigerian Military School in 1971. So I found my way to the railway station in Makurdi. I hope my story is not too long.
No.
And there, it was just local train, about twice in a week. I met a young person bigger than me who said he used to enter trains like that and go to somewhere. I don't know which area he was going to come out from. Maybe not far from Makurdi. I spent some days there. He would take me around with my shorts, wearing a shorts at the polo. The money I had for transport, I put it in a pocket and zipped up. And that was how I stayed until the day the train came. He had told me that if the train was full, he would sometimes hang on the steps. So when the train came, it was full. There was no space to enter inside. I had to hang on the steps.
The way you were instructed.
Like this boy told me. and I put my hand on the reel you can hold. And the train went. We kept going. We were going to Kaduna. Did I have an idea how many nights it would take me? Did I have an idea we were going to spend 2 hours or 1 hour or 3 hours or 1 day? I had no idea. And this was in the evening. So sometimes I started dozing outside the train as we were going. And somebody tapped me, you will fall. Then my eyes cleared. And when we got to another station and people came out, I made sure I managed to get in. I was too short to hold anywhere. I had no seat because the place was full. People were carrying loads and whatever. And as you try to lean this way, somebody carrying maybe a basket or a container of fura or no, we push. Somebody carrying the other we push. So that was how I kept going until sometime, as people came out at subsequent stations, I found a place to perch. And I got so thirsty, but God, I don't know now whether it took us that night and another night. We got to Kaduna. And I came out. As people were rushing in, I managed to come out, shouted as I was being squeezed. I found a place to sit. I sat down and dozed till morning. In the morning, I asked questions, how do I get to Zaria? Then we used to have these buses, these Ford buses and so on. There used to be, we used to have good public transport system. And if I asked a question, I said, that bus is going to Zaria. Because I didn't want to be stolen, I would go somewhere and find a way to ask another person. I'll confirm about 2 to 3 times. They said, that is the vehicle.
The military intelligence was already in you as a boy.
That is how I found my way and got to Zaria. And then asked questions, and from there got to Nigerian Military School through the depot. And when I got there, all the interviews had been written. But I was told, in fact, one person who received me, he finally became an administrator, David Komo, but we know him as Dauda Komo.
Former Rivers State Governor.
Yes.
He's late now. He died about 2 weeks ago.
Oh no!
Dauda Komo.
Oh no!
Yeah?
Oh no! Somebody said something. I thought it was a relation of his. It's a pity. Terrible. Now he was. Of course, people received me, but he was particularly interested, and they showed me where to sleep in the anteroom where they keep boxes. And I was told that another boy had arrived for interview. He came late. That his call for interview was taken by somebody else, and military school was called. Military school sent money for him to come for interview. The commandant of the school was his late General Ogundeko. We take him as a father. He was so good to us as children. We lost him. Had traveled and he was going to come back. On the return, they were going to organize an interview for one child. So I was kept, and when he came, they organized an interview for 2 children in Nigeria. I'm saying this with emphasis to tell you that, I mean, there's hope for our country. I wish we would continue the way we started. Then we would be anything.
Yes. So how was it like being a military school boy?
All right. Now, but let me just say that before I get there, when he came to organize the interview for us, mathematics, English, climbing of ropes, which I was so good at, medical tests, oral interview, they matched us one by one. We met at Restaurant Kumasi, then was a father, matched us in, and did the interview. And I went back, but before I went back, and we're told now that for interview, whether you pass or fail, you would be notified.
Okay.
So I went home back to Cross River State as a baby alone from Zaria. And when the year ended, we were going to January, my brother said, but they said whether you pass or fail, you will be notified. I said, yes. He carried me, we entered a truck. I started showing the way. But this time, we didn't enter the train. We entered trucks that the cold nearly finished somebody in January. We are in a truck with wearing a light shirt, traveling at night. We got to Zaria, and I got to the orderly room. Luckily for me, the person I met there, a lieutenant, was the person who invigilated my entrance examination in Calabar. Ikemefuna was a lieutenant, but finally I think we lost him as a lieutenant colonel or so. He said, and I greeted him, sir, because I had met him at the entrance in Calabar. He said, what are you here for? I said, sir, I came to check my result. He said, if you are not called, then why are you here? I said, sir, they said whether you pass or fail, you'll be notified. Okay. We took out to the room. My brother went, as soon as I called my name, they said, yes, he passed, you passed. We've sent a letter. We've even sent a reminder. I said, this cannot be. And that was how they wrote a letter and gave to me. And my brother dropped me in Kaduna. I had my elder sister there and went. In January 5 or 7, I reported at Zaria, still thinking that this thing cannot be true. It turned out to be true. Had passed. I was still hoping, would they say they made a mistake? And they never said they made a mistake. I said, God. So you see, I've told a long story to say, look I had a chance to take education by deceiving God. I want the education, but I don't want to be a priest, but I pretend to be. I refuse to do it. Now God started proving to me that, look, you take it free. I was trained free by the military school. I was trained free by the NDA. I went to the National Defense University of China, trained free. My son came out, went to military school, trained free. He became an Air Force officer. He has won awards in America now because a pilot. My other son, who is my namesake, a younger one, went to NDA, trained free. He's an accountant, he's a major in the army now, and so on. So that is the background on to this point. It's a long story.
Yes, it is.
You can pick what you need.
Yes. However, I will not forget to ask you, do I say those mischief conducts of small boys in military school? I mean, will you remember a story, maybe some seniors trying to do this, how you survived as younger ones when you landed there?
It's not for me to praise myself, but I think I was accepted as somebody who didn't play pranks. And in the military school, they give appointments, boys' appointments. I grew up being somebody who became, in primary 4, a boy corporal. It's unusual. Class 4. And in class 5, a boy sergeant and a junior house commander. And I know that even from primary school, I had gotten an award for good conduct, and I got similar awards even in the military school. So I didn't, the pranks that people played, I was not for any pranks. I was available to do my things. I was obedient,
And I
I was also strict.
Yes, you are also occupying some leadership positions
Sure,
in some classes.
Yes.
Now, having done all of that, let's go to peacekeeping. You were in Liberia, in MCL. You were in Sierra Leone, then Liberia. And so, how was it like in terms of peacekeeping in first of all in Sierra Leone?
Well, since you've talked about peacekeeping, let me start from where I started before I come to Sierra Leone. Now, I think, without mincing words, I may have been about the most exposed person in peacekeeping in our system until recently. Maybe what events have overtaken that. I started my peacekeeping experience in Lebanon in 1981. I was a lieutenant then. When I was admitted, I was selected to go for peacekeeping in Lebanon. And when I went there as a lieutenant, I was made to command a rapid reaction unit. And I know at the time I was even made to command a combined reaction unit, rapid reaction unit made up of Nigerian and Ghanaian soldiers. And I know there was a time I had to support the Irish battalion. And, that is my peacekeeping experience. Started very early in Lebanon, 1981, lieutenant. But later on in life, I again had to serve in peacekeeping in Liberia.
Yes, before we come to that, since you have chosen to go to the Middle East, let's look at today compared with that time. Will you say the situation has changed in Lebanon?
Well, the issue about peacekeeping in Lebanon was not really about Lebanon. It was about the crisis between Israel and the Palestinians. The Israelis moved into South Lebanon to push out the Palestinians and create a buffer so that they would protect their population. So they had to move into Lebanon to create that space between the other opponents and their population. So the military had to occupy that space. But the international system came in and prevailed on Israel to withdraw. But Israel insisted that if they withdrew, they needed a peacekeeping force or whatever, intervening force. So the United Nations deployed to separate the opposing forces, the Palestinians and the Israelis. It was not about Lebanon itself. But looking at things, it would appear that things are not even better now, because that mission that I was a member of still exists, UNIFIL, United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon. But we are seeing what is happening to Gaza, down to the fringes of Lebanon and beyond, when it comes to even bombings in Lebanon, Syria, everything. So I think things are worse now because we are following what is happening in South Lebanon, in Gaza, the initial abduction and killing of Israelis and the retaliation and what has happened. So we are not better off.
Okay, we'll come to all of that, but we'll just go on a short break. Even as I tell you, when we come back, we'll be looking at the fact that at the point you commanded over 10,000 international troops. You were in Sudan. We'll come to all of that. We've been having a discussion or conversation with a veteran. I'm talking of Major General Moses Bisong, or B. My name is Ben Sherman, and of course you're on to Third Eye Africa TV.
talking about South and the North. You talk about middle belt. Currently in Nigeria, we don't have middle belt. North Central is what we have.
Okay.
And they are included in the North. If the perception is because Nigeria is standing on a tripod, you have Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, they are the owners of Nigeria. That is a very wrong perception. These are major tribes in Nigeria. Simple.
Yeah.
Nigeria is owned by every single citizen of this country.
If you go to civilized nations, they possibly have, stratified their political parties such that those who play at the national level are there. And at the local level, you have other minor political parties playing there. And it gives sense of belonging to every citizen to be able to contest.
And in fact, once you have joined APC, all your sins are forgiven.
It's okay. It's okay. Off your mind. It's okay.
This is Third Eye Africa TV, exposing crime, savaging the nation.
Welcome back. Now, looking at your peacekeeping activities, global soldier, at the point Joe Garba once wrote, diplomatic soldiering. You are a diplomat, you are a peacekeeper, you are committed to world peace. And at the point, the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon at the point appointed you to be a force commander of the UN peace mission in Sudan. How was it like in Sudan that time?
Yeah, you permit me to just give a little background of my experience peacekeeping before I come to this, because you have said it. I said I may have been about the most exposed in peacekeeping until recently in the country. And why am I saying that? I started as a lieutenant in Lebanon. I later on went to the staff college as a major, finished my staff college, and I was given 2 weeks to return to classroom and start teaching. So I became a direction staff as a major. I think after that, I'm not aware of other people who have made PhD dagger as majors. We were just a handful of us. Now we're teaching the staff college when we had the ugly Charlie 130 crash, where we lost those in the senior division where we had finished the previous year, and we're now teaching the junior division.
That's the Ejibo plane crash.
Yes.
C-130.
Yes. So a handful of us ran the staff college for 1 year. Since the senior division had closed, everybody killed, directing staff killed. We ran the staff college, a handful of us, and wrote the packages for the set that was to come back, senior division, because we were running the junior division then. And by the time I finished and got my PhD dagger, I was still a major. I was nominated by name to go to Sierra Leone, to Liberia, and be a brigade major, like operation officer of a brigade in the field. And the NDA told me, you have been picked by the army chief by name. Please do us proud. That was how I went to Liberia and was brigade major when of a forward brigade. That was where ECOMOG advanced up to before there was a ceasefire. And I went to that brigade. While I was there, I got promoted lieutenant colonel. I was supposed to return because I had grown that appointment. But the then General Inyenge felt they would not let me go. So I was given an appointment at ECOMOG headquarters. We call it G1 operations then, operations officer. ECOMOG was commanded by, initially it was Ghana, but by this time Nigeria took over command. The chief of staff was a Nigerian, the G1 of ECOMOG, a lieutenant colonel was a Ghanaian, the G2, myself, a Nigerian, the INT, Ghanaian, a mixed up like that.
I think the Ghanaian commander was General Arnold Kwaino.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And when Samuel Doe was killed, Nigeria, that had the bulk of the troops, had to take over command for effective, management of the situations. But I hope I'm not going too far. But so having been there, I went to ECOMOG headquarters, and there was a peace agreement signed by the factions. But sometime, the factions started fighting among themselves. ECOMOG was at that time no more fighting with anybody. We were managing the situation, providing security for the government. So it was not easy for ECOMOG to react against them fighting because they were not attacking ECOMOG. At this time, without saying a very long story, the case was so bad that the commander of operations in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, in Monrovia, late General Concord, that time was a lieutenant colonel, a colonel, went to the Barclay Training Center. It's just like we used to have Dodan Barracks. Yeah. Like you have Asorok now, but in the case of Asorok, the gas brigade that protects is outside the presidential palace. But in Lagos, it was Dodan Barracks that housed the presidency. That is how it was in Liberia. So as they were fighting among themselves, the task force commander in Monrovia, elements of Nigerians, Ghanaians, Guineans, everything, was asked to go to the Barclay Center and remove our soldiers that are providing security, because if these people were fighting against themselves, our troops will be harmed, since they were not involved in the fighting. At that time, I said, sir, why should we allow the commander himself to go in? Why can't he send an officer? He said, no, let him go. It was the chief of staff, General Ayankpele, who always told me that, look, you're lucky you have experience peacekeeping. He, as a general, he had not had any experience. But when General Concord went there to pick out the troops, the elements of Liberian armed forces that had been disarmed, and they were just there, felt if our troops came out, the protection for them would have been gone. So they locked the gates and said, no, you can't go out. If you go out, we'll get killed. So they were not fighting against us. So our soldiers were not going to shoot at them. So General Concord got trapped, then Colonel Concord. But when he was released, he was asked to rest, and I was asked to take over. I came to Liberia as a major, got promoted lieutenant colonel. I was now doing the job of a brigadier general, a common grand task force. Days after leaving, and that was how I stabilized Monrovia.
That is why you are Moses.
Yes, I stabilized Monrovia, and there are stories to tell, but I made sure I never shot at any civilian, because we were the peacekeepers. We were protecting them. But having said that, that was my experience there. Came back to Nigeria, and not long after, there was a crisis in Sierra Leone. So Nigeria had to support Sierra Leone because the Sierra Leoneans were they coupled with us. And General Kobe was sent. He asked for me by name again to carry armored elements to support him. Nigeria had to set up an emergency battalion with persons drawn from infantry, armor, artillery, whatever, which is unusual. And I was placed on standby. By this time, I was doing a battalion commander's course in Jaji. A message was, I was nominated to command a battalion that was not yet formed. When I came back to Jos, the div headquarters where I was, and I saw there was a warning order for me to take troops to a battalion to Lebanon, to Sierra Leone, to support General Kobe.
Maxwell.
Yes. So I had to go to Bauchi, where I met General Abu Ali, the commander. Sir, I'm around. Where my battalion? He said, not yet formed. The armor elements are already known. We are waiting for the rest. For the army to form a battalion. So the battalion that was not yet formed had a commander waiting. While I was waiting, our troops got killed on Tetewa Islands on the Lake Chad. General Shah went to Lake Chad, came back, and told me, prepare to go and take over the command of the battalion in Mongunu from one senior person who was senior to me, Komonibo. I was to leave like the following day. I said, sir, can you please give me one day to at least prepare? He allowed me. That day I was checking my garden, my chicken and whatever, because I like farming. And then, do you know that that day I was given, I was not even allowed to use that day to myself. I was there writing messages from the army, sick traps, everything to headquarters, giving reports. And by the next day, I took my vehicle, drove myself alone from Jos to Maiduguri, and met the brigade commander. I said, sir, I've come to report. I was under him in Mongono. He said, I said, sir, any brief for me? He said, no, you are from the headquarters, you know better. So I went and took over from Komunibo, who was asked to drop his command. And the next day, I went to the Lake Chad. I took boats from Baga and went hours to Kangalam to meet my troops. The troops were restless. There was almost mutiny because they had been rushed into a place where our troops were killed and they didn't know what next. And the area harsh, desert area, sandy. So there I addressed them and took a handful of those who were trying to misbehave and returned them. And I started a rotation of my soldiers so that they would not just be helpless. I brought people out to say, let the families know that they are alive. I said, after 2 days, you go back. Then I would now start rotating those who would spend about 5 days and another side would take over. All that rotation I did by myself. I didn't ask for money from anywhere. Whatever small resources the unit had, I used. So I stopped them from being helpless, know that there was still communication with home. And that was where we were waiting for what next. That was where we lost General Abacha. Abdul Salam took over. And then diplomacy came in. Nigeria, Chad, Niger spoke. And troops were brought from Chad, from Niger to us in Baga. And with my battalion in Mongono, another battalion came from Sarti, another battalion came from Ilorin. We had Air Force elements, we had military mobile police, we had custom, immigration, all sorts of elements came together. And we combed collectively the Lake Chad area. And the commander of that force now was General Temlong. And I was a battalion commander. He was the overall commander. So we did that combing. I had the tanks and everything. So I said, sir, I stayed with him to write operation orders in Maiduguri Hotel. I said, sir, let me lead this advance, the rest can follow. He said, no, he decided to, where he placed a company here, a company there, one company behind, that's one battalion. I mean, a battalion here, and a battalion here in reserve. I said, sir, let me advance. I will have my company here, and the company in reserve. Let the rest be prepared to follow. I said, no. But finally, we combed the Lake Chad. I would drive at night, put my vehicle in one bush and hit the road somewhere. When we finished that, and I returned to, because I was not formally posted by the Armored Corps. I mean, the Armored Corps manages the armor personnel. The division, which is armor, is not in charge of the management of our career. The Armored Corps felt they should have been the one to appoint me a commanding officer, but the GOC appointed. So they decided to now send me to another battalion, Shaki, or your state, to show that they are in charge of their personnel. Rather than stay where the GOC said they should stay, they are in charge. He should have requested them for a CO, since he used his own knowledge. So it was just ego between armor commander and chief commander. So he decided to move me now to another battalion, Shaki. And I came to Jos. My wife had given birth before I left, about 2 weeks before I left for that operation. And I had not seen my child for a long time. So I said, please follow me to Shaki. The CO there had been asked to move. The house is free. My wife came to see me with the children. And while we were there, December ended. And by January, I was told when I got to Ilorin that we were presented for promotion to the rank of colonel. But before then, they were promoting us late. But they had adjusted our seniority, so this time we were presented early. And I said, is that? So January 5, of course, promotion came out, I was decorated in Ilorin by General Shangotade. January 6, the rebels, the army that General Kobe had sacked into the bush in Sierra Leone, staged a comeback to the Freetown. By January 7th, I was put on standby. By January 9th, planes came and they lifted my troops from Ilorin. How troops in Shaki. But the moment I was put on, they told me to be on standby to go to Sierra Leone. I worked as if the war would start tomorrow. Look at the banking system then. You travel from here to either Kaduna or Lagos to take your money. And if you took those soldiers immediately to the bush, out of the country, how would their families get their money? How would they be fed? Do you know I got the battalion, the unit, the bank that was managing my troops? I went to them. They sent people to my battalion. We did allotment to the wives or the next of kin, or whoever the officer, the soldier chose that will be collecting money every month to manage the family. I did all those without knowing that I was going to go to Sierra Leone immediately. I was put on warning order to go. My wife, who had not been with me for 7 months, I said, follow me. And why did I even ask her to follow me? When General Templong said I should go and rest, I didn't go to rest because I said, I have a battalion. People usually misbehave during holidays period. I would want to be in charge of my battalion. So I was there. When I was now decorated, my family that was with me, my wife said, look, she was going to Lagos to see one of our family members. The husband was my senior in the NDA. As she was leaving that day, I got warning order to go to Sierra Leone. I told my wife, I said, don't be worried, you come and meet me. Within 3 days of this getting warning order, because I felt, look, my warning order appears to give me some space. Be on standby for you are playing on so and so notice to move with effect from so and so. I said, but things can change. I worked as if it will be tomorrow. I packed my ammunition, my weapons, everything, deployed my troops to the armory and the arms store. Everything packed. I did allotment, bringing the bank to the barrack to do allotment for my soldiers, and started doing physical exercise, map reading, teaching weapons training. And of course, I would come out in the morning. If there are 3-4 soldiers already, I start running with them. Or the rest, the battalion will meet me on the way to Shaki and then back. The next, I think on the 3rd day, my 2IC got to where the troops had assembled. And as I was trying to meet them, I saw trucks entering my barrack from Ibadan. And I had to stop to ask them, what is happening? They said, we've come to move your battalion for operation, Sierra Leone. I stopped my 2IC, wanted to move to the battalion. I said, do you know why these people are here? He said, no. I said, they have come to move our battalion to Sierra Leone. I said, I went and picked my few things, some dresses, I said, if I cannot come back, bring them to Ilorin. I took off to Ilorin to meet the General Shangotari, the brigade commander, who was my commander. Why did it happen that way? I had just taken over. The radio in that place had gotten bad before I got there. We're still trying to fix it. So they couldn't call me on radio, and we didn't have this telephone system. And it was an emergency. Lagos was pushing, Army Headquarters was pushing the GOC in Ibadan. GOC was pushing the brigade commander in Ilorin. The brigade commander in Ilorin had not been able to reach me. Trucks have been sent from Ibadan to Shaki to move a battalion. I didn't know they were going to move that day. Why did it happen that way? We had crisis of fuel crisis. Ilorin may not have had those vehicles and fuel at the same time. Ibadan did it and pushed them. So I took off to Ilorin, where I met troops lined up in I had served in Ilorin as a young officer. It was from there I moved to Lebanon and back. So about 100 soldiers, the company was waiting already from that battalion in Ilorin. There's a battalion with the brigade headquarters. There was no officer amongst them. So one of the officers in the headquarters that came around was a weekend. I said, who are these? They say, yeah, men. I said, okay, double. They say, halt. As I was talking, another company from Kainji had arrived to join this one. And with one officer who had worked with me on the Lake Chad. And I said, take charge. I went to meet the brigade commander Shangotade in town. He said, look, the plane may have touched down to pick troops. Of course, by this time, I had called my 2IC. I said, look, we are so late. Can you move that battalion to meet me here immediately? He says, I'll try. So when the brigade commander said, look, the plane may have touched down, I dashed to Ilorin Airport. Not long after that, a Boeing 747 or whatever touched down. And they asked me, the pilot told me that, look, the slave starting system of the airport had failed. They may switch off, they could switch off their engines. But when starting, the plane may start, it may not start. If it doesn't start, they will need that slave starting system. But it was not working. What should I do? I said, I'm not going to be involved in how you fly your planes. The plane had to steam the whole day until my troops from Shaki, Oyo State, arrived in Ilorin with my luggages, everything. The brigade commander arrived at the airport to start pushing my troops into the plane. By this time anyway, I had almost lost my voice because I was organizing, mixing this battalion and that battalion, creating sub-units, putting sub-commanders at the airport the whole day. And when this other battalion came, I had already arranged how this troop will marry into my companies. Then as what my brigade commander was saying, my troops were moving. I said, sir, hold on. I gave them the last instructions. Then I moved them in. I entered the plane and sat down. The plane took off, and I chanted the soldiers in the plane. Do you know that a battalion of troops from Nigeria entered the civilian plane with their weapons and magazines mounted? We're sitting in our plane with rifles held. Have you ever seen that before?
No. That was emergency.
That is how we landed in Sierra Leone, and I took over that airport, irrespective of who was there that night. I didn't care. And the following morning, General Kobe, who was no more in charge of ECOMOG, was now the Chief of Defense Staff of Sierra Leone Armed Forces, came to
in fact, at that point, I was also in Sierra Leone to see some of those things.
Okay. And then General Shelpidi was the overall commander, but he was roving. See, commanding element was that commander was in Liberia. Shelpidi. Yes. Some elements of that were seen in Liberia, they were still under him. The one in Sierra Leone, the one I think Guinea-Bissau, I can't remember. So he was actually on the move, not very much on the ground. But we had a task force commander. And then the Nigerian contingent commander. As soon as I got to that place with my ammunition, I had packed so much that I think my commander was saying it was too much because those things arrived. I said, no, sir, they are not too much. When I got to Sierra Leone, I made sure my resources were kept under my control. And the day the following morning, of course, the head of state of Sierra Leone had been flown across the body of water. He was at the airport. He slept there.
That's Tijan Kaba.
Yes. And I was at that airport in the morning. A Nigerian ADC took me to him. When we were taking breakfast, I took something there. When General Shepidi came in, General Kobe came in, and they addressed me and my troops, and helicopters started ferrying my vehicles and my troops across. Second chunk, I jumped in. When I landed there, a Nigerian naval officer received me at the common headquarters, at defense headquarters where General Kobe was commanding. They got me a vehicle which carried my troops, carried me to government vehicle took me to Wilberforce, the ECOMO headquarters. When I got there, it was under fire. So if the National Army that was sacked had cut off all our brigades and had passed the brigade that was covering Sierra Leone in Koso Town under General Akpata, then a colonel, and they were now attacking the headquarters. Who fights for headquarters? Headquarters is on his own. The battalion that was in Freetown was now by the coastline. So that was how I started fighting day to day. And in about 20-something days, I cleared Freetown.
Wow.
I lost about 11 soldiers and an officer, a great officer. I know the day he was shot in an ambush, I had linked up with General Akpata or Colonel Akpata. I was coming back when I entered an ambush. While I came out of my vehicle to give my instructions, my soldier formed a screen around me for protection. I said, what? I didn't have time for it. I said, but this soldier can give their life for me. But of course, we managed to repel whatever challenge we had. And by the time I moved forward and got back to the hospital where my soldier had been rushed to hospital, I found him dead. And the soldier, my orderly, wept. So we cleared Freetown, and then I was now a colonel. I was no more supposed to command a battalion, because as at that time, battalions were commanded by just lieutenant colonels. But the army was planning that they would get colonels to command Reiki battalions. It had not been done. But they knew I was promoted. They didn't ask me to stand up. My soldiers were even saying, Shaki, sir, you not go again, you're promoted. I said, it's not for me to decide. But I went, when I finished, then I remember that he's now a colonel. I had to return. At that time, General Mujakpero had just arrived to take over command of ECOMOG. And he said, we will not change a winning team. So a lieutenant colonel just promoted, days he went into operation, was now, they won't change the winning battalion, winning team. I was now asked to take over the brigade of General Akpata, Colonel Akpata. So weeks or a month after my promotion to the rank of a colonel, I was now commanding a brigade, when brigades commanded by brigadier generals. So that was what happened. And to tell you, well, we did that one. It's a long story, I cannot finish it. Yes. But let me say that the day I was being sworn in there as a brigade commander, that was the time General Obasanjo was taking over, as being sworn in also as a president. And I remember when General Malou came to address ECOMOG in Sierra Leone, he entered there, addressed us, we sat down. As he moved out, entered his vehicle, I came out. As he was moving, he stopped his convoy and came out and shook my hand. I said, I will not come to Sierra Leone without seeing you. That was what happened. But to cut the short, I came back, I was presented for National Honors Award. By the next year, I was represented, and I got the National Honors Award of the Officer of the Order of the Niger by General Obasanjo. When I was a lieutenant colonel, I didn't hold any political appointment. And so, but to just link up with the stories, that was one operation again. Then, when later on I was to, I finished with Liberia, I finished with Lebanon, with Liberia, this is Sierra Leone.
Then in Sudan,
later on,
the UN.
Yeah,
and you were appointed by the Secretary General of the UN.
Yes, and I'd also finished with the Lake Chad. I was interviewed for operation to take out from General Aguai in ECOMOG, in UNAMSIL, United Nations African Mission in Darfur. I was the chief of operations of the Nigerian Army then, having been GOC in Kaduna. One division. I flew to New York, where I was interviewed by the UN headquarters for interview to take out from General Aguai. On the whatever 20-something floor. I was told at the end, a Nigerian officer who was on the team, secretary said, "Sir, the difference was as clear as Sprite." Finally, the command didn't come to me, went to Rwanda. Rwanda had the issue of genocide. It would appear the issue of UN. When we had a problem, you were not there for us. Will you still deny us a chance to serve? That politics was mentioned from sources I cannot verify. And so it moved on to Rwanda. But I was called from UN headquarters. General Biako called me then that, look, there is another opening. I was interviewed as a lieutenant general. There were two other openings. One, DRC Congo, lieutenant general again, but working language French. Sudan mission, not Darfur. The Darfur mission is a local crisis of a region. The Sudan mission itself was north and south conflict. Darfur was regional in the north. But the Sudan mission that I was now asked to go for, after being interviewed for Darfur, was covering the crisis between the rest of Sudan and the south. That's what John Garang was handling. I couldn't have applied for DRC Congo because of working language French. And why would I apply to Sudan when it is Major General, when I've been interviewed as Lieutenant General? And people were saying, sir, at the end I decided to apply. But I was told, you don't need to come to New York again, we know you. We'll interview you on telephone. The day of the interview, I was traveling, the day they gave me, I was traveling with the Senate Committee on Defense, led by Senate President David Mark. And in Lagos, because I was coming in as Chief of Operations with them to Liberia to visit, I took a hotel room with a landline, and at night I was called and they interviewed me on telephone. They didn't even need to go far again. And I went, visited Liberia with the Senate Committee on Defense, returned to Nigeria, and not long after I was called, congratulations, you are appointed first commander of the Sudan mission. Now, the issue was, I was still Chief of Training Operations, and they were saying that, look, we need you now because we are going to census and referendum for the South Sudan independence, and Abyei, a region that is disputed. At this time, people were saying, sir, don't go, the rumor is strong, you are likely to be going to be the next army chief. But I know that it doesn't work that way. So I said, I can't make myself army chief. But it's unusual that people can say, it doesn't usually happen that way, but it was a bit loud. Because even for that very interview, when New York called and said they wanted somebody with a good record, other senior officers were saying, Obi, I should be the one to apply. So at the end, when it was getting too late, I had needed to be in Sudan. I dropped my things, handed over. The pen who took over happened to be my classmate in the military school, my best man, when I had my wedding, Jaran Gubane, and I flew to New York, where I was briefed, saw Ban Ki-moon, entered this office, that office, that office. Look at the time zone. You live here, you are there, you are working immediately. As I was finishing there, I was flown in, then crossed Nigeria, went to another time zone. So I was almost destabilized, but I immediately went into action. When I took over, the man I took over from, a Lieutenant General from Nepal, after signing the handing and taking over, I took my seat. He sat the other way. I said, I didn't expect to see you. I said, why? He said, they said you were going to be the next army chief. I said, no, I can't make myself. That was how I went into action and commanded a mission that didn't have Nigerian contingent. Nigeria as a fighting contingent. Nigeria was in Darfur, but we had a sprinkle of officers also in this mission. So the battalions from here and there around the world, 12,000 troops. I had staff officers from Germany, from Britain, from everywhere. We had battalions from Kenya, from India, from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, and the rest of them. And I commanded our unit. It was a great experience. During that mission, I addressed the United Nations Security Council 2 times in New York. I received the United Nations Security Council several times. Susan Rice, at the airport in Sudan, she would call me aside when you could see permanent members are there. I would be speaking with her.
Great opportunity.
Yes. So I ran that mission, and we conducted the referendum. We couldn't conduct the referendum for Abyei. While the Security Council was visiting us in Sudan, I knew there was going to be a crisis with Abyei. I was called and told that the Sudan army has taken over Abyei. Abyei, that was a disputed territory with UN present. And I had a Chapter 7 mandate. I had 2 battalions from India. One was deployed for peacekeeping. One was my reserve battalion for action, to punch. I had used it in some territories. I had used it to the southeastern part of Sudan, hundreds of kilometers without roads, to deploy and break the white army that was attacking. So when I was told they had taken over Abyei, the Sudan Armed Forces, and we couldn't organize that referendum. We had organized the main referendum. We couldn't organize that because that area is made of the Dinkas. The Dinkas are in the south. With that place was actually in the south sometime, but later on the boundary was adjusted to be in the north. Now they were at liberty to choose in their referendum to choose whether to be called Southerners or Northerners, Northern Sudan or South Sudan, irrespective of the outcome of the overall Sudan referendum. The Sudan referendum could have said, no, we want to remain one nation. Abyei, in that one nation, are you South or North? They could say, we want to go. But in that going, Abyei, are you going or you're staying? So they were to choose where they want to be, South or North, irrespective of the overall referendum. And that is a point where the Misiria, who had cattle, have access to water for their cattle. I think they were sensitive of that, so they took it. And with the Security Council visiting us, we were at a cocktail party in the evening. The head of mission hailed him and carried us. We had 2 deputies, deputy humanitarian, deputy political, and I was force commander. We were the mission leadership. We had, then I called the force commander, the head of mission. I said, sir, the Sudan Armed Forces have entered Abyei. He was disturbed. Do you know what I did? Without talking to anybody, I picked up my phone and called on the air component. We had a very nice component then of commercial helicopters and whatever, fixed wing helicopters. And I had Ukrainian helicopters. When I went to the south, I even had Russian helicopters, Russian Air Force as part of my force. When I addressed AFRICOM in Stuttgart, Germany, the 4-star general who came out to receive me said, we shall send our troops to work under you. So I had even the Americans working under me in Sudan. The German ambassador addressed me in South Sudan and said, how will my troops be protected? I said, why not? I'm here. He said, we've gotten what we want. But before that, let me just say that the following, I haven't told the SRG, the Sudan Army have entered Abyei. Immediately I made my arrangements. The following day I flew fixed wing to Kadugli, far north, where I had the Indian battalion standby force for me, reserve force. Apart from the battalion was deployed. There I took my fighting force in helicopters. The pilot, the lead pilot said, sir, Abyei is under fire. I said, I'm aware. Let's go. He said, sir, sign. I should sign. I signed. We're moving in. I flew my helicopters and entered Abyei. By this time, the UN compound had been shelled. The elements there were all in bunkers. I brought them out. The local commander, Sudan Armed Forces, seeing helicopter have landed, drove to me and made me at the UN compound. And I told him, this is the UN compound, you are away to the UN compound, you've shelled it. The UN personnel must not be harmed. These were humanitarians, political elements, maybe a handful of military elements. But I had a battalion from Zambia in Abia. The CEO had traveled, I'm not sure, they say he was not ready to come back. The place was too hot. So I decided that I would drive into Abia, the town. I wanted to move into Abia. The local commander said, sir, the place is not safe. I still wanted to go. I told myself, I said, no, this man is not in control of those artillery shells and mortar bombs that come from everywhere. So there can be accidents. So I decided now not to take a tour around Abia, to say that UN will not be cowed of Abia. When I had finished my tour, I entered the plane, the helicopters, some elements of other South Sudan elements, because we had a joint administration managing Abia. No, we had Abia under UN, but we had a joint arrangement where we could manage crisis. So those from South Sudan, they were not going to be endangered. So I took them in my helicopters and flew out, deployed additional troops. And when I came back, Heliman Carrier, still today, he says he's proud of what I did. Of course, I got Ban Ki-moon's commendation for purposeful leadership. And that is why today, Abia, that had been lost to Sudan, is still under the United Nations, because I joined in the setting of that mission. As we finished with that mission, South Sudan got independence. That mission was closed down, and we moved to the south. New troops brought in to join elements. So I now commanded the South Sudan Army mission, where I said I took several actions and so on. But I'm saying this to say that I happen to be one of very few anywhere in the world to have commanded 2 United Nations missions. And up till now, I was asking my ADC, who today is a colonel, I said, has another person ever commanded 2 missions after me? He said, no, sir. So I'm saying categorically that up till now, I'm the only one who has commanded 2 United Nations missions from Nigeria, and I think very few, if there are others, anywhere around the world. So yes. I've told a long story.
Yes, but and truly, if you check, I did not interrupt at all. I wanted your flow. I mean, ordinarily, some people say, oh, you allowed him to talk too much, but the way you are giving out the points, they are so okay. But we are coming very close to the end of this interview. Now you have retired. You were GOC, 1D here in Kaduna, another hotspot and all that stuff. But talking about, let me call it, see, when you were doing some deployments, you had to consult with families of soldiers going on operations. Why was it that you felt you should do it that way?
Well, when you are commanding these men, I told you that when I came into an ambush, my orderly and our soldier, they formed a screen around me. You can see people who can give out their lives for you. So there you are people, you are soldiers, you are commanding them. And commanding is not about pride, it's about responsibility. And a battalion is called a unit. Unit, it has a lot of meaning. We are one unit. Not units. A battalion is a family. So the welfare of your men is your responsibility. The welfare of everyone is another person's responsibility. So when I was to go for operation, I knew that if we rush them out there, no allotment to their families, the families will be stranded. And if the families are stranded, if the soldiers move out and they have no hope, they don't know what's going to happen to their families, of course their morale would have gone.
Yes.
They would even mutiny.
Yes. Then the last one, I remember when General Lagbaja was still alive in Ibadan, the Chief of Defense Staff too, Christopher Musa, They were there, I was there, and I remember General Christopher telling soldiers, commanders, when you are given allowances to give troops, give them. Allow them to have pass. Then he said, weapons do not fight the war. Soldiers fight the war. So, I mean, how do you see this as coming from a general like the Chief of Defense Staff?
I think that's what I just explained, that the soldier is your responsibility. His welfare is your welfare. The welfare of his family is your interest. And it's your business to keep them alive, to keep their morale high. So I think General Lagbaja said exactly what it is. So the welfare of our troops is our responsibility as officers or senior non-commissioned officers, or whoever is senior to their fellow. Is your responsibility to show interest in people placed under you. To hand over people's lives to your care is a big responsibility. So it's not a joke. And if you are selfish, you think about yourself and you cheat them, you destroy their morale to fight. And that should never happen. For any day at all.
So what's your advice to the CDS and other top military brass?
Well, you've just mentioned one of them saying exactly what it should be. I listen to the CDS and I listen to army chiefs, and the messages they pass on are the right messages. I will keep encouraging all our officers at every level, all our non-commissioned officers at every level, to take the welfare of their men at heart and to do the best they can to keep the fighting spirit of armed forces high.
So, on retirement, what do you do?
And there's another angle again to it.
Yes,
you see,
very brief.
When I came out of retirement, I was first appointed by the military defense headquarters as a consultant. Myself, Professor Ladan, and then Professor Ezu of University, I think, I don't know whether it's Enugu or Nsukka, whatever. We were the consultants. We worked with the armed forces of Nigeria, the police, the immigration, the customs, and whatever. Working with the British outfit. I can't call the name now. We drafted the civil-military relations packages for the armed forces, the police, and the immigration, and others that should guide relationship between the military and the civilians. We drafted. It was supposed to be launched. That was under President Jonathan. It became implemented later. It was implemented later, but not formally launched. So that was one of the jobs I did. That took me out to South Africa, to somewhere here and there. Then, again at retirement, I was appointed. I was invited by the UN system in Nigeria, not Nigeria. Nigeria didn't invite me. The UN system in Nigeria invited me, and I discussed with the deputy head of mission, humanitarian, the head of mission, Edward Callon, in Transcorp. Sat down. I said, "Look, how can we work together?" I said, "You tell me how." And they said, "Look, they thought about it, and the deputy head of mission or humanitarian said that, look, there was an experience somewhere, and then maybe we should try it here again. And if it works, maybe it becomes a standard." They recommended if I could be a civil military advisor to the UN system in Nigeria. I said, why not? And I was appointed, like I said, not by Nigeria. And I worked with OCHA, Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. The contract was signed by UNDP, and I was an advisor to the head of mission in Nigeria and head of OCHA, with emphasis on the humanitarian crisis in the northeast region of Nigeria. The reason was that we had a humanitarian crisis, the military is operating amongst our people, and the military has a way of driving its operations. The humanitarians were also in the space, and the humanitarians have a way of looking at their humanitarian crisis, and the two may have disagreements on how and the way they look at their things. So I was made civil military advisor, and I helped to bridge a gap between the humanitarians and the military. And because the military knew me and they had respect for me, they listened to me. And my focus was, look, we have a humanitarian crisis in Nigeria. The United Nations is here to support us because we have been supporting others. And they are here because our people are suffering. The military is also there because our people are dying. So there must be a meeting point. So I helped to bridge a gap while allowing the military to do their job and still respecting humanitarian principles. That was the job I did for some time. And then it was renewed a number of times until they couldn't renew again because of the limits to which an advisor can be with them. So they changed it to about 2-3 times a week. But during COVID time, contact became very minimized. But I had also appointed somebody to be like my aide, a young lady I met at one of the meetings, Oyin, she's from the West. And she said, sir, please do anything, let me know. I'm a lawyer, I work with NGOs. So I recommended, it was an interview, I recommended her to her, and she emerged. So I took her around, I was working. So after leaving, even the meetings I used to hold with the military and the humanitarians, civil military relations meetings, she's able to organize them in my absence. So I did that in my absence. So I worked, after leaving, as a consultant for the European Union. I worked again as the civil military advisor in Nigeria. And then, of course, I used to give lectures, but with time, maybe begin to meet less people who can remember that you're there. And finally, back home, I'm the social-cultural leader of my tribe, the Boki Nation. They stretch from the fringes near Taraba, Benue, through Ogoja to Ikom and to the borders, and then across to the Cameroons. When we meet as Otubebuki, that social group, I am the leader. It was headed by Chief M. Timbu, an uncle who was a minister at about 25 years in Nigeria under Tafawa Balewa government, and I was given that chance. But now he's now elected office and has tenure. So hopefully I should be able to wind up there too and now finally retire and rest. Thank you very much.
Not forgetting your chicken.
No, I'm into farming now.
Exactly.
My mushroom, my chicken. I had kept pigs before, I had kept cows before, I had kept goats. Now I'm working with somebody sort of a plantain chips factory because my area is a plantain belt. I don't have the money, but whatever small I can put, I told this friend of mine, this from Akwa Ibom, I said, carry it home. It is in my home. It is not for me to make money. It is for our people to grow plantain and to improve the markets, to enhance their living standards. Whatever comes to me is not important. So I'm telling them, plant high-yielding plantains. There's a market. Before, people would pick them at peanuts, but now we will challenge the market. The prices will rise for them, and that will give me joy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's been a long, long journey, just like the journey of life, from birth to the last day of taking a breath. We've been discussing the veteran, and we've been having this discussion with Major General Moses Bisong Obi. Of course, a man of many colors. I don't need a summary. Neither do you need a summary, but he has said it all. We want to thank you for coming to Third Eye Africa TV.
Thank you very much.
My name is Ben Shaman. Keep watching Third Eye Africa TV. Till we meet again. Thanks for watching.